2004, I had a chance to meet her at the Project Censored Awards in San Francisco. I was there getting second place for a report on the Patriot Act, withdrawing remaining rights from the Bill of Rights. And she's in our film, Martial Law, 911 Rise of the Police State. And she's been on the show, I don't know, 10 times or so over the years. She is former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney. We played the clips here before, but, you know, grilling Rumsfeld about sex trafficking with the Pentagon and defense contractors and DynCorp. And Rumsfeld saying they're allowed to do that. Just type in congressional hearing on child sex trafficking, and you'll see it on YouTube. And, boy, they went after her after that happened. Democratic Party as well. And she goes to war zones to cover what's happening. She has a lot of courage. And, you know, this is what the Democratic Party in the past has claimed they're about, fighting for the little guy, but they're all bought and paid for by the same people as the Republican leadership. And I was driving along in the car listening on a local affiliate here in Austin, Texas. I think it was Monday. And I heard Cynthia Mckinney on Captain Joyce Riley's show here on the GCN Radio Network, GCNlive.com. And I thought, man, it's time to try to get her on. Because last time I tried to get her on, she was out of the country doing reporting. But she joins us for the rest of the hour. And we've got some in-studio guests joining us as well. But, you know, she was talking about Barack Obama and why he's so dangerous, because he makes people that are traditionally anti-torture, anti-war, anti-police state just say, hey, I want NDAA. I want troops on the streets. I want TSA sticking their hands down our pants. I want banker bailouts because it's Obama. And we saw conservatives go to sleep under Bush because, well, he's a Republican, we're winning. It's the same thing when they're bought and paid for. So I wanted her to flesh that out, to talk about her trips to the Middle East, talk about her take on the ouster of a Gaddafi, and now in Syria, our government admitting they run al-Qaeda. I wanted to get her take on where she sees all this going and where she sees the future of America. Because let me tell you something. Cynthia Mckinney has more courage than any man I know. I mean, I've been invited to Iraq to cover things with the real press. I've been invited to the West Bank. I've been invited to these places. I've been invited, you know, to come be an observer by foreign governments, an official letterhead. I won't even get into that. And it's not that I'm physically afraid. It's that I'm comfortable here covering things, doing things, reaching millions a day. But I think that's a cop-out. It's just that it's just like some of the other guests we have on who were in Tripoli while it was under bombardment. People like Webster Tarpley, people like Wayne Madsen. And she just has incredible courage. And I know she's transformed, too, from 20 years ago, you know, kind of being more of a mainline Democrat, to her awakening through the system from the inside. That's really what I admire above everything out there, is people that really have courage and really tell it like it is. Now, I'm going to stop gushing for Cynthia Mckinney. That's why she's been so demonized, misrepresented in the press, is because the system is scared of this woman. And I guess you ought to count her lucky stars, because they used to just kill people like her. Now they just kill your character in the media, assassinate your character. But they sure tried to do that. But I know the real Cynthia Mckinney, and we ought to do a special piece just on the wars she's been through. Cynthia, great to have you with us, Congresswoman, a former Congresswoman. You know, you've heard my little intro here. I want to get into Obama first because he provides that illusion that's helping bring in this corporate world government right now.
You're absolutely right. And I remember watching a clip of Henry Kissinger saying that it was amazing the amount of goodwill that candidate Barack Obama had. And it is absolutely true that around the world, President Barack Obama still maintains goodwill, even as he is torturing, renditioning, killing, spending our money on war and even more war. And it's just amazing the amount of goodwill. And so what that really tells me is that people around the world were really waiting for U.S. voters to step up to the plate and do the right thing and elect someone who, first of all, would stick to his word and keep campaign promises, make a campaign that was really a campaign of, for, and by the people, but then also elect someone who was capable of being a global citizen, someone who felt responsibility for the impact of U.S. policy in other places around the world. Sadly, that is not the case with Barack Obama. And the talked about nomination of Ambassador Susan Rice to the Secretary of State position is just one more example of how the powers that be are able to take what ought to be something good and turn it into a travesty. This woman sat on top of U.S. regime change in Rwanda that resulted in 1 million people being killed. And this was a policy that she went along with.
And that State Department Memorandum 200, Henry Kissinger, 1973, continuing. We have that clip in a moment of Kissinger. We're going to play that, Congresswoman. But here's what's so incredible about this is that these facts are public, that Rwanda wasn't a disaster. It was engineered. All that's come out, and it's part of the policy of killing Africans deader than a hammer. And it's so incredible that as long as it's the liberals doing it, it's cute and funny. Here's Henry Kissinger right after Obama was elected saying he's going to bring in the New World Order. Here it is.
Its task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
Okay, again, that is on the stock market floor, so that's not the best version of it. We actually have a clip of it in Fall the Republic, breaking all that down with Henry Kissinger. But there it is, and it's just so incredible that people say, oh, you don't like Obama because you're a racist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Cynthia Mckinney, what do you say to people that throw that around when people point out that Obama is just the other side of the same globalist coin?
Well, unfortunately, we still have a lot of people who buy into this Kissingerian myth about the goodwill. And I subscribe to the view of Glenn Ford of Black Agenda Report, who says that President Obama is the more effective evil, not the lesser of two evils or the lesser evil, but he's the more effective evil. And why is that? Because he is allowed to do the things that Bill Clinton, even or especially George W. Bush, would not be allowed to do. He's allowed to do the things that Romney couldn't even think about doing. And so now, for example, the tabling of the idea of $400 billion cuts in the social safety net. This is outrageous when there's no talk at all about trimming the Pentagon and cutting out all of these wars. Literally, as we speak, right now, the United States is bombing Somalia. There's no need for all of this.
African is invading everything, as we said in the Obama deception now 4 years ago. All of this is coming out. And what about Libya, where they put al-Qaeda in? They actually engage in ethnic cleansing of real Africans, people that belong there. And then now they're using the same al-Qaeda against Syria. It's incredible.
Yes, that's exactly what is happening. And I think the government of Syria announced that they had the bodies of over 150 foreign fighters. And we know that people from Libya have, with their weapons, gone into Syria. It's just a tragedy all around. This is a man-made tragedy. It's a human made tragedy. And it is something that if we exercise our political rights and stretch our political muscle, we can stop it. But I just am so, at this point, not confused, but just disappointed in the lack of outrage at the things that are happening and that our president and the Congress can get away with.
Well, it's like the bottom dropped out. The government openly arms al-Qaeda to take over 2 countries. They use al-Qaeda to attack inside Iran, staging terror attacks while saying give our rights up because of al-Qaeda. The government runs giant white slavery rings. People always email me saying, white people's? No, it means sex slavery, folks. I mean, which you've been a champion against. I want to get into that. It's so crazy. And then I had a young woman cutting my hair this weekend, and she was sitting there saying, yeah, I want to join the UN to fight sex trafficking, and it's the UN running it. I mean, it's just the level of ignorance, like the bottom's falling out. Recently, the Harvard School of Health looked at more than a dozen scientific studies concerning fluoride and confirmed what countless other scientists have been documenting for decades. Sodium fluoride in the body reduces IQ and increases cancers. You see, the aluminum industry and the fertilizer industries would have to pay to store all the toxic waste they produce. But instead, they get our counties and cities to pay to put the poison in our water. It's not just fluoride we're getting, but lead, mercury, arsenic. The list goes on and on. And a lot of this toxic waste comes from China. Unfortunately, fluoride and its derivatives are only one of hundreds of toxins being added to our drinking water. We're battling the globalist on so many fronts. Health is an area where we can all take control of our lives, and it all starts with that basic building block of water. It is time to purify our family's water. The ProPure filtration system with added fluoride filters is the best system from my research to protect you and your family. InfoWarsStore.com already has the lowest prices on ProPure water filtration. But until December 10th, we are going to offer 15% off the already lowest price. I know what I'm giving my family this Christmas. ProPure. Go to InfoWarsStore.com and get 15% off the already lowest price out there with the code WATER15. WATER15, and you get 15% off at InfoWarsStore.com. If you type in Mckinney Grills Rumsfeld, you'll find a clip we grabbed off C-SPAN. I don't know, was it back in 2007 or so? And then YouTube kept pulling it down, but people made copies of it. And it's Mckinney Grills Rumsfeld. And in 9 minutes, she brings up the child kidnapping rings and stuff. And Rumsfeld says, well, DynCorp is just allowed to do that. I mean, that's what's incredible about this. I'm going to play that later. But while she was talking, it was Democratic operatives that basically helped push her out of the Congress. I mean, they have gone after her like nothing I've ever seen. And Hank Johnson's the guy that says islands capsize. That's the guy they put in. A new article at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com, and it's got the clips of him talking. Democratic rep wants to amend Constitution to deny free speech, Kurt Nimmo. So literally, I wasn't going to bring up this guy who they used to get her out of Congress that says islands capsize. They're floating, you understand, according to him. That's who the globalists found to get rid of this incredibly smart lady, smart as they come. They put this guy in who now is calling to restrict free speech. I mean, he literally is like a cartoon character. Cynthia, I think it's time for you to run for Congress again.
Well, you know, I get that, and I this last little thing that you make me speechless all the time, and no one is ever able to do that. But yes, I'm working on my PhD right now, and when I finish, I think I might just do that because, and actually, I'll be finished very soon. So just in time for 2014. Conveniently enough.
Tell us about this guy that the neocons got behind to run against you because you kept exposing him.
Well, the only thing I can say is that it's really pathetic. You know, the people of the 4th District have not been served at all since I left. And we've got these outrageous statements that have been made. But when I say not served at all, I mean, people don't even see him. And maybe that's a good thing, because then they are not reminded of the complete, person that they have there who really is not the brightest pole on the block. But what he was bright enough to do was to say yes when the Democrats approached him. Apparently, it was Rahm Emanuel who did so and gave him the deal. And then he came to me and said, "Well, you know, it's just business. It's nothing personal."
Yeah, well, let's play the guy that thinks islands are floating. And he said this wasn't a joke. Cynthia, I mean, it's just incredible the lengths they go after you.
Well, it was both the Democrats and the Republicans, and it was also the pro-Israel lobby, which, of course, no one wants to talk about. But when we have Operation Pillar of Cloud being supported by 535 members of Congress, as we just saw the most recent Israeli bombardment of Gaza, and I was prepared to go back to Gaza as well, but they had the ceasefire, and so then, of course, there was no need to go in underneath the bombing. But I was told by people in Gaza that it was a 24-hour, around-the-clock bombardment. And there really wasn't very much left to bomb except the people from Operation Cast Lead. So now what is this all leading up to? And I would have to say, with the news reports now being that President Obama is determined to support more money, to donate more money to Israel for their dome missile defense system. And there's also some building 911 that is a mysterious construction that's also being reported in Israel. Now, I have Israelis who are telling me that Israel is actually building a series of bunkers. And maybe that's what this is. I have no idea.
Former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney, demonized, taken out of context, giant media operations against her. We're going to play a clip of why coming up when she exposed Rumsfeld. There's like an hour of it, but there's short clips online. McKinney grills Rumsfeld, where they admit DynCorp was running giant child kidnapping rings. That's who runs the major CPS contracting here in the U.S. They're the biggest single contractor as well. And they were put in the penalty box on Bosnian contracts for 1 year. That was their punishment. And they had the director of the Pentagon Budget Office, Dr. Chu, explain it all. And they are scared of her. And I'm telling you, she's got angels around her. She'd be dead. Here is that clip of that congressperson, before we go back to her, that replaced her, that the Democrats ran against her. Not like Republicans have run people against Ron Paul in his own district. Democrats hate the idea of the First Amendment does not explicitly restrict the right of corporations to free speech. In other words, to address this perceived flaw, Representative Hank Johnson, a Georgia Democrat, has proposed amending the Constitution. We need a constitutional amendment to allow the legislature to control the so-called free speech rights of corporations, but that would then lead on to individuals. And it breaks all of that down. This guy's a total puppet. Anything he's pushing, you know, is bad. Let's play that clip of him saying islands are floating. Here it is.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that. The Guam population, I think, currently about 175,000, and again with 8,000
Okay, that's
Marines
enough. He goes on to talk more about capsizing. And Congresswoman, I apologize for even going back to that clip. I just want to point out, this is who the Democrats wanted to replace you with, because you've been critical of some of the things the Israelis are doing. And Ron Paul, in his farewell address, you know, he said, why is AIPAC? Why will no one be able to criticize AIPAC or they come after you? I mean, I've not even been overly critical of Israel, and I've had AIPAC lobby come after me. I mean, you've got to really, you know, just toe the line or they come after you.
Yes, it's true. And actually, in my schoolwork, which is the PhD is in leadership and change, and clearly our country needs both. But I'm focusing on targeted assassination, and I'm going back to the most complete and thorough documentation that we have of this particular phenomenon, or policy rather, and that is during the COINTELPRO, the days of the counterintelligence program. Now, what makes this an important issue for us to understand thoroughly is that now today we have a president who's saying that, who is claiming the right of targeted assassination, not just of foreign enemies, but of U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. This is such a grand leap into the stratosphere, or some of us would say the twilight zone, that we have got to understand. If we're going to dissent, we've got to really understand the ways in which now this playing field has been substantively changed by legislation and by the policies and practices that allow this kind of a thing of targeted assassination to take place with impunity.
Well, take the NDAA. Now they want to expand it to allow full military operation, not just have the military disappear us. And now the new Army manual, that can pull the number up for listeners, says re-education camps, that they'll put political dissidents, quote, in re-education camps. They're even using the authoritarian name, Cynthia. And again, former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney.
Oh, you better call me Cynthia.
but I mean, it's amazing that it's like open authoritarianism.
Absolutely. But you see, these are plans that were drawn up back during the time of the 60s. And that's why the Church Committee reports are invaluable for not only academicians and, historians, but also invaluable for people who want to dissent and to lead change today. Because Operation Chaos, Operation Garden Plot, these are all, if I were to say the things that are written in these documents, people would say, oh, she's this, she's that, call me all kinds of denigrating names. But it's there, and it's online, and it's under the Church Committee reports. It's
declassified. Tell people some of the stuff that's in there.
Well, they go into great lengths. They do in fact, they do a case study on the targeting of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And they did everything from the media, which they said that the United States CIA had relationships, and imagine that in the era of Pentagon perception management, that this is even multiplied now, but that they had relationships with publishing houses, journalists, entire media organs, foundations.
Operation Mockingbird.
In fact, every aspect of life. They say in the Church Committee reports that thousands of academicians, thousands of professors were on the CIA payroll, one way or the other. They were actively on the payroll, or they had projects that were financed.
And now it's literally, no exaggeration, 20, 30 times worse. Jesse Ventura, his first week as governor, they said, we want to call you down to the bottom of the Capitol. And there was 23 CIA people there basically telling him, we're watching you here locally. And he said, well, it's illegal for you to be operating domestically. And now tens of billions a year are spent in messages in TV, in the sitcoms and dramas. And what are they? Anti-family, anti-freedom, anti-gun. All of this, we are being bombarded with just absolute destructive messages here. And
That's right. In the 1999 trial that was conducted by William Pepper, who represented the King family, there was expert testimony given that said that approximately 30% of the CIA budget at that time was in this idea of, you know, the Grand Wurlitzer shaping public opinion. Imagine what it is now. Imagine. So here we have the penetration of intelligence, and this is all cataloged in the church committee reports, from churches, domestically as well as international, universities, foundations, media and publishing houses. Every aspect of our life had been penetrated one way or another by the intelligence services of the United States. And this is back in the 1970s. Now, of course, back then, Frank Church, Senator Church, who led one part of the investigation, and Otis Pike led another part of the investigation on the House side, Frank Church said that these activities that ranged from targeted assassination through neutralization of people who dissent, like members of American Indian Movement, members of the Black Panther Party, members of the Puerto Rican Independence Movement, which are the three organizations that I'm writing about right now, and right through to the kinds of Jerry Rubin wrote an open letter that they went through his bank account. They knew how much he made every time he took to the stage and made a speech. They knew everything about Jerry Rubin. And at that time, it was illegal and un-American, according to Senator Church.
And now it is many times worse. But here is the silver lining. People in the FBI, people in the CIA, that was mainly race-based then, and it still is some to a certain extent today. But now it's purely cold-blooded, globalist, corporate banking cartel that took over with the Federal Reserve, but now is fully dissolving the U.S. People inside the police, the military, and other areas, because I talked to them, but we're seeing the evidence, they are now demoralized, but not in a bad way. They now get it because of countless people's work, like myself, you, Ron Paul, and others, and they understand. They're not buying the old stories of why they tell them to go out and do evil stuff. They now are getting this. So I think that's really the battle, is over the heart and soul, because now Congress is doing whatever they're told. They're following NATO, you know, being told NATO gives our military orders. So now it's gotten so bad. I mean, I'm starting to see a real awakening. Are you seeing that?
I absolutely am. And that's why I've been working really hard. And I think I'm seeing the dividends of this work. But I've been reaching out because at one point, it became clear to me that it's not black or white. It's not a racial thing anymore. They were just practicing on us, and now they've expanded to the larger community. And so the old paradigms, the old political paradigm, left, right, you know, communist or whatever, all of that is no longer relevant. It's wrong versus right.
Yep, that's it.
That's right. And
it's tyranny versus liberty, and both parties are bought and paid for by the same foreign banks, and they brag in the news they've conquered us.
That's why I've been reaching out to Oath Keepers, and I've reached out to this young man. We've been trying to connect Dan Johnson, who is leader of these individuals who have decided that they're going to draw a line in the sand on NDAA. And what I want to do is I want to partner with all of the people of this country who want to draw a line in the sand. I'm ready.
It is coming down to that when they say, yeah, we'll torture you. Yeah, we're spying on you without warrants. Yeah, we're going to take your pension funds and give it in a banker bailout. It is so cold-blooded. Now, I want to get into white slavery rings. That means sex trafficking for new listeners out there and what you have exposed. The UN estimates that in just the last decade, over 2 million people were trafficked out of Europe alone, millions out of the Middle East, Africa. This is a giant industry. And who runs it? The big defense contractors. Start telling folks about that, and then we'll play the clip.
Well, I would also just like to mention there's another clip of me with Chertoff. And Chertoff, as every time I'm going to the airport today, and every time you go through an airport, you know, it's, I think about the Chertoff machines that make him very wealthy. So this idea of us challenging, like the young people of We Are Change and like Luke Rutkowski. I mean, there are some young people who have decided that they're just going to do what Mario Savio said, and that is put their entire bodies against the gears and the levers and the wheels of the machine. And they're saying to the owners, you know, if you don't stop it, we're going to stop it, which is really beautiful. You're right. There is an awakening. And I'm just happy to be able to see this awakening now, but I want to see more as well.
Wow. Yeah, we do have that clip actually queued up. And again, if anybody wants to watch it in full, just type in Cynthia McKinney grills Donald Rumsfeld. Here is that clip of her in Congress. What year was this when you did this?
That was 2006.
2006. And here's just part of it. Here's part of that hearing.
I thank the gentleman, the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. McKinney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. The president called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children. While